Hi and welcome back to my channel. Now in this video I'd like to share with you some really simple tips and tricks for taking better photos of your puppy and other pets around the home. My main focus during this video is of our 11-week-old puppy Luna. Luna is a Hungarian Vizsla and is growing extremely fast, so it's a race against time to try and capture as much of her as possible while she's still a puppy. Most of these techniques and general tips are aimed at photographers of all levels who primarily use DSLR or mirrorless cameras. The same principles could be applied to smartphone or compact camera photography. However, for extreme photography such as capturing fast motion and for low light situations, it's really worth investing in proper camera equipment that will allow you full control over your settings. We've now had Luna for over 3 weeks. Her training is going really well, but we're also trying to capture as many photos and videos of her while she's growing up, and she's growing fast. I work as a professional photographer. I'm mostly shooting professional sports, travel, tourism and landscapes. I also do some drone photography and real estate marketing. I'm not really a portrait or studio photographer, but since we've had Luna, I've tried my hand at various different types of photography, lots of things I wouldn't normally be doing, which I have to admit has been a lot of fun. What I'm really keen on doing is capturing action shots of Luna while she's playing in the garden or during her walks on the beach. Capturing shots that would be almost impossible using a smartphone camera, but also capturing those moments that would almost certainly be missed with the naked eye. What I'm also trying to do is show you how to take better photos of your pets while at home, using simple tips and tricks to improve your compositions, making use of the natural light around you, and for you to develop better control over your camera functions and settings. I actually covered quite a lot of tips and tricks in part 1, so this video kind of carries on from where we left off. So let's get into it. Luna is growing so quickly it's hard to keep up. We take her on slightly longer walks, take her to the beach where she can meet other dogs and experience the water, and she's doing really well with her behavioural training. I'm really keen to photograph Luna almost every moment she is awake, so I guess my first tip is to be prepared for those unexpected moments. In this set of photos, Luna had just woken up and was sitting with her legs crossed on the wicker chair we have in the main living space. The main light source was slightly behind her, but still enough to illuminate her face. I really like this pose and the way she has crossed her paws over, and her name tag just happens to be facing the right way. Just a really nice set of photos that would have been missed if I hadn't had the camera ready. I'm also really keen to capture as many action shots as possible. The problem that we have is that it's really hot outside. We also have quite a lot of rain and storms around this time of year. Therefore, I find myself doing most of the photography indoors, which isn't ideal as the light is terrible. I've also decided to avoid flash photography for now because I don't want to damage Luna's eyes while she's still very young. Anyway, I thought I'd start to experiment using remote triggers, a small tabletop tripod and my wide angle 15 to 35mm lens, and using the natural ambient light within the room. The results were a bit hit and miss. I'm also using manual focus, so I've preset the plane of focus to a certain spot, trying to capture Luna as she crosses that plane of focus. It's a bit of a challenge using f2.8, but the good thing about using a wide aperture, this creates a very shallow depth of field and it will help to blur out the background. To set the focus, I simply set the camera up on a tripod and switch to manual focus, and then rotate the focus ring to my desired focal range. I use a dummy object to set the focus and then simply make a mental note of the position the lens is focused to. Now I'm ready to start shooting. These remote triggers are great. I'm using 2 Pocket Wizard Plus X's. They're very simple to set up and work perfectly. I'm now just walking around with some of Luna's toys, trying to tempt her in front of the camera around the area that I focused on. I have one of the Pocket Wizards in my hand with the other connected to the camera. I'm able to press the trigger as and when Luna is actively chasing her toys around. Not a bad little experiment. I wasn't completely thrilled by the results, mostly because of the untidy looking backgrounds, but it made me start to think more about what else I could do to try and capture those amusing action shots. I gave it another go, but this time moving the plane of focus much closer to the lens with the idea of filling the frame with more of Luna than the cluttered background. These shots look nice, but nailing the focus at f2.8 can be difficult with such a shallow depth of field. But I need to use f2.8 to allow as much light onto the sensor as possible. I also tried holding the camera looking down on Luna while she was playing tug of war with me. For this, I'm using the camera's eye tracking autofocus function to try and focus on her eye. These photos work quite well, but it really is trial and error to get the focusing right. So the best thing to do is just keep practicing. You'll get the shots eventually. The RF 15-35 is a great lens, but I thought I'd switch back to the RF 28-70 as this will give me an even shallower depth of field using the f2 aperture, which helps to blur out the backgrounds even more. For these shots, I used the camera's autofocus features set to animal eye tracking. I was simply holding the camera as low as possible using the LCD display folded out and positioned facing up. It worked well and helped me to see what I'm focusing on. The eye tracking autofocus really does help to keep the subject in focus, instead of me having to use a single point focus. Luna does move very quickly, but I think the autofocus does a good job keeping up with her. I was really keen to give the 15-35 lens another go, especially position as low as possible using that mini tripod. I experimented with using the kitchen worktop as a background, but this area of the house just doesn't get enough light and I needed really fast shutter speed in order to freeze the action. I was really reluctant to use a flash until now, but it seemed like the only way to get enough light to be able to freeze the action using faster shutter speeds. I was advised by our vet that the flash shouldn't actually affect Luna's eyes too much, so now was the time to dust off those speed lights. I have 2 speedlight flash guns and also a softbox to help diffuse the light. For studio photography, I think a strobe light would probably work much better, but this isn't a professional photography studio. Also, the use of constant lights could also work just as well. So for this set of photos, I'm using the mini tripod and the Pocket Wizard remote triggers. I've set the focus to manual and set the planar focus to a specific position as before. The flash gun is set to standard ETTL mode, so I'm shooting at 1/250th of a second. I'm simply trying to tempt Luna to the location the lens has focused on. I'm using a mixture of treats and toys to help stimulate the pup. By dragging Luna towards the camera, I can fire the remote triggers continuously until she crosses the plane of focus, with the hope that at least one of the shots will be in focus. The shots definitely look better using the flash, however, that background is really not working for me. I tried isolating Luna in one of the photos and I was really pleased with that style of photography. She really does stand out using that kind of plain white background. For the next set of photos, I've set the flash to high speed sync, which allows me to photograph at much higher shutter speeds, necessary for capturing fast moving action. We're indoors, so the light is quite bad, so I need to use either very, very high ISO or some sort of artificial light source. As you can see, it took a while to find the right settings for the camera and flash, but I finally got there shooting at 1/1600th of a second at f4 and ISO 4000. The background is still way too busy, but my intention was to isolate Luna onto a plain white background. I love these shots. The ISO is probably still a little too high at 4000, but to be able to freeze the action, I needed at least 1/1600th of a second. For that, I need a lot of extra light to compensate. The weather has finally improved, so it's time to go outside to the beach. And we are spoilt for choice here on the eastern coast of Australia. We have kilometres of white sandy beaches. The perfect place for the pup to get a good run out. I'm mostly using the RF 70-200 f2.8 lens for these shots. A good tip is to position yourself lower down at eye level with the puppy. If you can't lay on the ground, then open the LCD view and position the camera lower down with the screen facing up. This way you'll be able to see what's going on. I'm using the autofocus settings on the camera with animal eye tracking activated. I love the eye tracking features on the Canon cameras. Sony and Nikon also have amazing autofocus features, as well as the Olympus and Panasonic Micro Four Thirds cameras. Luna does move around very quickly and the autofocus doesn't always keep up, so you really have to be patient and keep trying different positions and angles. We're trying to make Luna braver with the water. We tried taking her out a few meters to see if she would swim onto the beach. The autofocusing is having a tough time keeping up as Luna splashes her way out of the sea. Here are the results from our beach walks. A fast shutter speed is essential for shooting fast action. With an f2.8 lens, I'm able to control the ISO values in lower light conditions, as some of our beach walks are during the evenings when it's much cooler for the pup to enjoy the outdoors. The natural light is definitely your friend. Try and position yourself with the sun behind you and check on those backgrounds. If there is something distracting, then reposition yourself for cleaner backdrops and turn the autofocus on for those challenging action shots. The same principles can be used for taking action shots in the garden. Maintain a fast shutter speed. For these shots I'm using 1/2000th of a second. f2.8 to help blur out the background, and I'm happy for the ISO to be on auto mode. That way the camera can adjust itself for the correct exposure. It's important to remember that these shots are only really possible with the camera's autofocus features turned on. The AF on the modern mirrorless cameras is quite amazing. I love these action shots of Luna and the sunlight makes the photos look really great. The following day wasn't as hot as usual and Luna spent most of it outside in the garden, so I decided to try and capture some candid shots of her exploring the garden. Let's see what she got up to. For this set of photos, I decided to use a speed light flash with a soft diffuser as a kind of fill light, trying to highlight those facial features such as the eyelids, the detail on her nose, and to reduce shadows around her face and ears. It can take a while to get the settings right, but I finally got there using a higher ISO value to help maintain the exposure with a faster shutter speed. The flash was set to high speed sync and is really just adding a small burst of light to help eliminate or reduce shadows around the face. I think these photos look really great. By holding the camera down lower with the LCD display out and facing up, I'm able to see what I'm doing while trying to focus on Luna. I'm using a mixture of eye tracking autofocus and also single point focus. I have a dual back button setup with my Canon cameras. You can find out more about back button focusing by watching this video here. All cameras can be set up with back button focusing if you prefer to work in that way. Now back to the makeshift studio I've started to set up indoors. I looked online to find a relatively cheap backdrop I could use to help hide the clutter around the house. I found a 10-foot by 12-foot backdrop stand on Amazon and also a 9 by 13-foot white muslin polyester backdrop sheet. Both items were fairly cheap and arrived quite quickly and seemed to do the job fairly well. I'm not looking to set up a professional studio at this stage, so it's not worth me kind of overspending on gear I may never use commercially. The setup was really quick and easy, but you'll notice the folds in the cloth of the backdrop. Not ideal, but I was planning to edit those folds out later on. I just wanted something quick and simple and easy to set up and just to hide the room. So I'm using the RF 28-70 lens. I need to maintain a very fast shutter speed as Luna is very close to me and is moving around very quickly while playing with her toys. Even while using the flash in high speed sync mode, I still need a high ISO value and a relatively wide aperture to compensate for the extremely fast shutter speeds. The results were worth the effort. The backdrop has definitely helped and the folds aren't that noticeable after some simple photo editing. My only issue is trying to reduce that high ISO. To do that, I simply need to increase the amount of light in the room. I gave the 15-35 lens another go using this backdrop and the mini tripod, manual focus and remote triggers. I set the plane of focus to various different positions and then tempted Luna into those areas while triggering the remote shutter. The backdrop is definitely helping here. The manual focus technique can be frustrating at first, but it's really worth persevering with as it will allow you to move around and direct the pup into the area you want it to be in. Overall, I'm pleased with the results. I just need more light in the room to reduce the ISO. For the next shoot, I bought some really cheap and basic studio video lights. The flash is working well, but I thought it would be better to use a combination of constant lights and high-speed sync flash. These lights are available on Amazon. They're not overly expensive and will help to light the scene from different angles. However, they are not the brightest lights available. For that, you will need to spend a lot more money. I'm now able to set the aperture to f4, allowing a slightly greater depth of field, just in case I misfocus slightly. The ISO is now slightly lower than the previous shoot using the constant lights. I'm also hand holding the camera as low as possible using the RF 28-70 lens. The animal eye tracking autofocus is on and it's working fairly well. The backdrop still looks quite messy with all those folds, but I'm happy with the results, especially after the editing process in Photoshop. While I still had everything set up, it was an opportunity to try the RF 15-35 lens with the mini tripod, manual focus and remote triggers, the same as before. By this stage, Luna has lost all interest in her toys and is only interested in treats. I decided to use peanut butter as a way to guide her into the plane of focus. It kind of works okay, but now Luna is looking really messy with all that peanut butter everywhere. I also folded the backdrop away from the floor as it was becoming a bit of a nuisance. I should really find a way of fixing that backdrop in place to stop it from folding over. Anyway, some interesting shots and probably worth the extra work at the end of the shoot, despite the extra work editing the photos and post-production. By now, Luna is obsessed with peanut butter and also extremely tired. Time for a nap. So hopefully this has been of some help if you're looking to take better photos of your pets around the home. There are lots of things you can do to improve the lighting with some fairly cost-effective solutions. You don't have to spend crazy money on pro gear, just buy what's necessary and have fun during the process. The key to all this is practice and perseverance. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe and stay tuned for more videos.